just so everybody's familiar with sort of what we're trying to accomplish here, of course.
Hey, Debo, way to go, man. Welcome. Hey, everyone, say hi to Debo. Yeah, he's been working his ass off this week.
This does not work for me. This is too easy. Anyway, we're just gonna like kind of BS about the race a little bit, talk about what we think is gonna happen, who we're looking at. You know, these guys are a wealth of knowledge, so we hope it's entertaining for you guys here, and obviously the live audience as well. But I guess jump right into it. I'm Dylan Bowman.
Bryon Powell.
Andy Jones-Wilkins. Good to see everybody.
Between the three of us, I think we have 17 finishes. Andy takes up 10 of them, but Bryon and I together have 7. I have 3, you have 4, I think.
Something like that.
Yep.
Theirs are better than mine.
You were top 10 7 years in a row.
Let me tell you about 2005.
I don't remember that year.
All right, rein it in, guys. We're already off track. So I kind of want to just go through a couple subjects to try and give us a little bit of structure. The first being the conditions of this year's event. Andy, of course, you've been at this race every year for I don't know how many years, at least a dozen or more. And can you tell us like what to expect on Saturday and how it might compare to a previous running of the race?
I think if the forecast holds true, it'll be the 3rd or 4th hottest race in the history of the race. That's just based on the Auburn temperatures and all of that.
Thanks.
I think it'll be fun to see how that plays out when it all's said and done, but it's going to be a hot year.
Yeah. So in terms of historical comparisons though, is there another year you think?
Yeah, it's going to be like 95 and 06.
Yeah.
You think it's going to be that hot?
Yeah, but it's not going to
pre-baking.
It's not going to have the preheating, so it's going to maybe, it's going to maybe be a little bit softer than that. But the current race administration is not going to like wussy course it and skip Michigan Bluff or skip Robinson Flat or something like that. So it's going to be a hot year, but it's going to be a pretty badass year, and it's going to reward somebody who's patient, who's smart, who maybe even has been here before.
Anything else about the conditions? Obviously no snow this year.
Yeah, which I actually think in some snow years it can actually be a little faster through the high country. It's the most sort of technical sections of the course are early.
It's true.
And when they're covered by snow and it's not just this little snaking path, you can go point to point fast.
Right.
So it might slow down the high country a little bit for some people who are proficient at that. And the pre-baking, the preheating people might not know about is sometimes the heat waves build for a couple, like a week or 5 days, and the canyons just bake and heat up day after day. And so it stays a lot hotter at night. Those rocks just glow practically.
Right. The runners are not going to have like the heat coming up from below.
It's not going to be 85 degrees at midnight.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, and I sort of see it kind of similar to 2013, which was a super hot year. The second year that Tim Olson won the race, he ran about 15, I think, to win. And I think just looking at the forecast, that was a year too where it was extremely hot, but it wasn't hot in the few days leading up to the race. But I think the big variable that I've experienced in the race is how early it gets hot. Do you guys know offhand like what they're expecting early in the morning? Because oftentimes the hardest years are the ones where it starts warm and gets hot early, rather than the races that have the highest.
Well, I think it's definitely tracking like 2013, and that would be a really hot day early, and you kind of got to have your shit together by like Duncan, and if you don't have maybe a second bottle going from Duncan to Robinson, you're going to get behind, and if you get behind, you're never going to get ahead.
So here's a little.
So
here's a little tip. I mean, people often will try to go as light as they can in carrying water, but maybe you always carry a sports drink in one bottle. Carry water in that second bottle, because if you're not drinking all of it, use that to cool yourself in the high country.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of places to dip or get snow or anything like that for most of the race.
What I've said to a lot of people, including the guy who I'm going to be pacing, is especially for the people who are wearing a vest, if you have the two bottles in your vest, carry a third empty one at least, just so you can fill that up with water, like you said, to keep yourself cool, or to obviously supplement hydration.
You can catch up a little bit if you need to.
Yeah. Cool. Well, just to give us some structure, we're going to talk talk a bit about the fields now, starting with the women's race. And so I want to kind of prompt you guys, but in a way that's sort of specific so that we don't go open-ended for hours. So
I can't imagine why that would happen.
Start with Andy.
Hey,
Andy, who are maybe like the 2 or 3 women that you think have a legitimate shot to win the race?
I think Courtney Dauwalter is the woman who's going to win the race.
Okay.
If she runs her race, if she's smart, and she is smart, if she pays attention to what she needs to pay attention to, she's going to win. The challenge for her is there's a chase pack that has experience, that has smarts, that has like just that it factor. And if this year turns out to be one of those races that has an it factor, like 26 had, like 1998 had, like 1985 had, then she's going to lose.
Yeah.
But if she's ready to respond to that, she's going to win.
So you think she's the most talented woman in the field, and as long as she does the right thing, she's going to pull it off? Who do you think?
No, I don't think she's the most talented woman in the field.
I apologize.
I think you measure.
That's a different. Yeah.
I think that was cool for you to put words in my mouth like that. For a young little kid like you to say, "Oh, so you're saying she's talented, so she's going to win." I think she's a smart, hard, fast runner who knows how to run 100-mile races. But after 70 miles, it's about a whole lot more than just that.
Totally.
And I don't know if she has that. Only she's going to know the answer to that, and only we are going to get the answer to that question on Saturday night, Sunday morning.
And I would say we saw a little bit of that back last fall when she ran the Moab 240.
I think we did.
I mean, not that I don't think it's quite as an impressive performance as some people may lay it out to, because she won overall and all that. But it's the fact that she was still running relatively strong after all those miles, after all that terrain. And if she can continue to do that on a really hot, tough day at Western States, she can run that last 30, 40 miles very quickly.
And if she can't, there are some really, really
So maybe
talented,
give us 1 or 2 more women that you're looking at.
I would be really worried about Casey Lichtai, Stephanie Violette, and Eliza Lafayette. And then maybe Lucy Bartholomew and Elsa McDonald. I mean, I would be really worried if I was front running in this field about those 5. And it's going to be so dynamic and so fun and so interesting to see. I mean, if Courtney screws it up, they're going to be ready to unscrew it up for her.
Yeah. What about you, Bryon?
I mean, AJW really did a good job of hitting on those very front runners, and I think sort of the X factors here. I mean, we have the Courtneys and the Casey and the Stephanie, and having people like Camellia Mayfield and Caitlin Gerben, who ran a great race, Amanda Basham, Elsa McDonald, like those folks can surprise, and on the hot days like this really shake things up, and you can have somebody who you don't think can quite maybe necessarily win the race on paper, or is maybe the favorite, and totally nails it. Like, I don't know if you would have called Pam Smith before she won, or
I wouldn't have, totally wouldn't have.
And she's
one of those can be. I mean, she's here, but
she's still here, but she's got a cougar in her closet.
Must be nice.
Or on her shelf.
So I don't have much to add to that. I think you guys covered most of the important and interesting stuff. So maybe what's another thing in the women's field before we transition to the men's field? Another maybe non-elite storyline that you guys are interested in following?
Are you going to talk about Diana Fitzpatrick?
Oh my God, Diana Fitzpatrick. Diana Fitzpatrick has finished the race 4 times, all under 24. She's 60 years old. She is, I mean, we love Gunhild Swanson. We all do. But Gunhild ran a 25-something. Diana's going to crush that. Guaranteed. You can mark that down. I mean, Diana is going to run. I mean, if she goes over 24, it's not going to be by much, but man, she knows how to run the race. She's smart. She's sophisticated. She's been in these mountains before. Gunhild did awesome stuff when she was here as a 60-year-old. Diana's going to crush it.
Bryon?
I knew he was going to talk about Diana. Like that's the other woman's story, and it's really going to be a good one.
Yeah, I actually had that written down too. And Diana's a good personal friend of my wife and I. We actually had dinner with them last week, and she seems very ready. So that'll be an interesting thing for everybody else to follow as well.
Just Megan Laws again. We talk about Diana, but like Megan Laws is now 57, correct? And like going to crush it again. Like she was the top pick for 8th in our prediction contest, and that's a safe pick to be somewhere in that 6th to 10th, or maybe even better on a ridiculous.
The amazing thing about Megan is she's going to be in the running for the 40 and under.
She could win the Masters.
Well, great. Well, I think let's transition now to the men's race. I think it's a little bit more predictable in terms of the favorites, a little bit more concrete with Jim and Francois and Tim Frerichs in the field. So maybe instead of talking about that, let's sort of hear who you guys are looking at to be kind of a dark horse, Seth Swanson type person who might show up and surprise and be on the podium.
I kind of have to look in the other direction, that there's just such a set of solid guys who show up in this particular year, a hot year. And just so many of them we always think of Jeff Browning or Ian Charmian, but there's like the Paul Giblins and the Jesse Haynes and all these guys who, like, I don't want to bet against them finishing in the top 10, especially in a rough year like this.
Kyle Paitieri, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that guy is ready to go.
He finished last year on a broken ankle.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
He's a badass, and he's smart. And, I do want to talk about Jim for a second, because it's like third strike and you're out.
Yeah.
And I've been around the race long enough to know that you can't do that for too much longer.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to run his race. He's going to have his shit together. He's going to have to really pay attention to like how he's feeling and what he's doing and what he knows he can do and what he knows he can't do. Because there's guys chasing him that have been chasing him for years. I've thought a lot about it, and he's an Air Force guy, right? There's Army and Navy guys who just jump right in, and there's Marine guys who like see the big picture. The Air Force guys, they don't really know where they fit. And I think that's a lot about what Jim is doing here. He doesn't really know where he fits.
Yeah.
And Saturday is a time for him to say, here's where I fit. And if he crashes and burns and shits the bed again, then we all know, like, that's where he fits. But if he goes and runs, a 15:10 and wins the thing in a hot year, then we also know where he fits. And I think that's important for the sport. It's important for like all of us who aspire to be something better than ourselves to actually listen to that. And frankly, I think it's the same way for Courtney. It's the same way for Eliza. It's the same way for Kyle. It's the same way for people who've been around the sport long enough. Ian and even Jeff, like to really find themselves in the sport. Because if there's something that differentiates ultra running from like sprint running or Olympics or cycling, it's that you can find yourself in the sport. And the sad part about Jim is he hasn't done that yet. And I really want him to do that. Yeah,
we kind of tried to press him on that a little bit in our interview with him and see how he's going to approach it this year, because I think having employed the strategy that he has of just fireworks from the gun and have it backfire twice, if he does it a third time, then it's sort of like, what are you doing, So it will be interesting to see how he chooses to execute the race, particularly with guys like Francois and Tim in the field who like to race aggressively as well and put pressure on the rest of the field early in the race. So I don't know if you have anything to add.
I think just talking about those couple front runners like Jim, Francois, and Tim, if any of them win, they have to kind of do something that they've never done. Jim has to stick it. Tim's running his first 100. Francois is like, this is, you know, he's crushed it. He's the best mountain 100-mile runner in the world, but he hasn't nailed a race like this. So like if any of them do it, it's kind of a breakout establishment kind of race.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point. And that, yeah, Francois, this would be a like kind of a different type of course that he's typically won on and been super successful on. Obviously one of the best of all time. Frericks has won like some of the biggest races in the world, so he's got the experience having done that at Transvolcania and TNF, but he hasn't done the 100-miler. So yeah, I think that's a super.
You know, I turn it around, Dylan, and say, I wish you were in this race.
I'm glad I'm not.
Yeah, but I'm glad. I wish you were. Yeah. You know, because the way you've run in the last 6 years, the way you've been smart about your training, the way you've been sophisticated in your understanding of what the sport is and what it should be and what it can be. I hope that we're sitting at this table in 2, 3, 5 years and talking to you about this stuff. Because, great. I mean, God, this is Dylan Bowman, everybody. Let's hear it for him. I mean, the guy has picked his spots. He's incredibly smart. If you were in the field this year, you would certainly be, I mean, because Bryon wouldn't be in the field. So you'd be the smartest guy in the field. Thank you. Megan's not in the field too, so you'd be, well, if she was in, you'd be the second smartest person in the field. But the truth is, Dylan, what you've, and I'm so glad you're here that I can do this. What you've done and made a difference in people's understanding of the sport is, yeah, here we are, and there's all these guys that we're talking about who are, 36 hours away from starting this race. But you really, Dylan, have sent a message to the rest of us that we can be better, we can be stronger, we can be smarter, and most of all, we can be smarter. And you're a smart guy, you're a sophisticated guy, and when the dust settles on all this stuff, I hope that you're back here running this race and running a 14:41:59.
So that transitions me.
Wait. Andy, thank you, and I'll pay you for all that later. But, and I appreciate it, especially coming from you. It means a lot. But I mean, before I kind of want to talk more about like the other men in the field aside from the Jims and Tims and Francois. I know we're already going way over time, as is predictable. But for me,
who's got 37 minutes on the pool?
There's a time limit on this thing?
I mean, for me, the two guys I'm looking at, and one person I think is shocking that he's not being discussed more, is Didrik Hermansen, who finished second at this race 2 years ago, and he's back and clearly flying on the radar.
And Giblin, whatever his first name is, Paul Giblin.
Yeah, but I mean, a previous podium finisher who almost nobody's talking about. And then we spoke to Chris Brown yesterday, who I was super impressed with. Yeah. Good head on his shoulders, great sense of humor, and I see a lot like Seth Swanson, from 2014, who got in via the lottery, didn't have to race a ton early in the season, coming in fresh and focused on this race specifically, and clearly talented, having done well in his only 100-miler and also a TNF 50 in a world-class field. So those would be my two.
Well, and Chris Brown did well on a hot day in San Diego. Yeah. 17-ish.
And he lives in Santa Barbara, so I'm sure he's okay in the heat.
So I got a question for AJW. This is a question I'm sure you thought of for yourself. The men's 50 to 59 record is in play this weekend, or is it? Carl Meltzer.
I have to think it is. I mean, I've noodled on that a lot. It's 1843. Latimer said it in 1989. Carl's put his eyes on it. Don't forget Dean Karnazes is here too. As a 55-year-old, that's a hard run. 1843, trust me, is hard on a pure course where you actually have to go to Robinson Flat and have to do it. I think Carl can do it, but it's going to take a perfect day. It's going to take a perfect day for Carl, and I'm not sure if he's ready for a perfect day. He'll probably tell us. by Robinson Flat or Dusty if he is. But that's, I mean, if someone brings that down, it's going to be huge.
Yeah, that's an incredible record. The other record that I think is going to be interesting to watch and that I hadn't thought about until yesterday is Jeff Browning called out the Masters record, which Mike Morton holds and set in, I think, 2013. Yeah, 15:45, and Jeff's 46 years old, looking to go sub 16. Another incredible storyline there.
If Jeff could do 15:46, I'd be impressed.
Yeah. Especially in these conditions. I mean, we're talking about age group records, and the men's 70 and up is also in play. But are any of these really in play with it being a maybe not the top three year, but it's going to be a dang hot year.
It's going to be a hot year. It's going to be a hot year. Right?
I mean, that's kind of temper the expectations, because there's years that, I think you're going to have to break 16 to win, but it might not be a low 15, high 14 year.
I mean, I think one or two guys will be under 15, and what I'd really love to see is a
16.
woman.
No, he's
under
15 or under 16?
Under 15.
You think one or two guys under 15?
Yeah.
Okay.
If they're going to win.
You can have a hot take,
No, that's great.
If they're going to win.
That's great. Listen, I don't doubt your knowledge. Yeah.
But I think
don't spoil it, because we have that's our finisher.
I think it's better. I think it's better for 3 women to go under 18.
Yeah.
That's what I'd really like to see.
Before we move off that topic, I think one other interesting storyline that's, I think, worthy of mentioning is Ian Charmian, who has finished in the top 10 8 years in a row. Andy's done it 7.
Screw that guy. I'm out of here.
So,
is he in the room somewhere?
Yeah, Ian Charmian, a true, consistent champion of the sport, who's been doing it as good as anybody at the distance for a long time, at least in terms of consistency and stuff. I think that'll be interesting to see if he can go for number 9, and then, of course, next year going for number 10.
So I remember, at the risk of boring people, this dude passed me in 2009, and my pacer said, "Oh, that's the guy who just got 24th at Comrades," and he thinks Western States is a fun little hobby. And it was the same guy who didn't even show up for the awards, right? Because he didn't know that the awards were like a thing. But that's Ian. And now he's going for number 9. He's going to get number 10, and he's going to crush us all. I mean, Eric Skadden and I were talking about it, and Tweetmeyer and Ann and I have talked about it too. I mean, the guy has done. Ian Charmian has done something in Western States that I think nobody really will understand until it's all said and done. But he's going to get 10 top 10s. I mean, Doug Latimer did it in a different era. Nikki Kimball did it on the women's side.
Did Trayson do it?
Oh, Trayson, yeah. But
just give him his perspective.
Yeah, there is that Ann Trayson thing. Yeah. We all just put it out there. But yeah, it's amazing, and so he just has to make a little challenge for himself, and he'll be fine. No one's worried about Ian Charmian.
Yeah,
but
he's almost the most automatic person you
he
can put in
is so automatic. Yeah.
But you're not going to hear a word from him about him being on automatic. He just gets it done. And
He gets it done. He rolls in. Yeah. His heels still touch his ass.
Those majestic calves that he has.
Yeah, whatever they are.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, unless you guys have anything to add to the men's thing, we can transition to who we think is going to win and in what time.
I'm sure Powell has something to add.
Who wants to start?
Go for it.
Both men and women. Maybe start with the men.
I think it's time for Jim to win.
Okay.
Yep.
I've seen him both years. I've gotten to know him a little bit. I still question a little bit of what overtakes him when he gets to that place between Robinson Flat and Dusty, when you're just feeling so good. But I honestly think he knows he has to have his shit together this year or he's done.
I think he does too.
And if he doesn't, frankly, Dylan and Bryon, I'll be the first to tell him, dude, you screwed this up, and you're screwed for the rest of your life.
All right. So what time does Jim run?
I don't care about his time.
Well, I want you to predict a time. You said at least 2 men under 15. What do you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think he's going to be crawling after 14:42. I mean, for those, I don't know if anyone was here in 2012. But it was like raining.
Yeah.
It was practically snowing. You might have run it that year.
I did.
I mean, it was like...
It was puffy jacket or Robinson.
I mean, it was
weather.
puffy jacket. They had like 400 pounds of ice that just melted.
But for perspective, that was the year Ellie Greenwood broke the unbreakable record.
Broke the unbreakable record by Ann Tracy. Yeah. The only woman to ever go under 17. Yeah. So, I mean, we're not going to have one of those years. Yeah. But I mean, if Jim can creep around 1450, 1455, if he gets to
1450, we got him on record. Jim, 1450. Your women's pick.
Courtney.
In what time?
Courtney's fast as shit. I don't think Courtney knows how fast she is, but I don't think she's ever had like Casey, Stephanie, and Eliza and Lucy chasing her. Yeah. So she's gonna have to go under 18. Yeah. She like only 2 women have gone under 18. Ellie and Ann and Casey. So 3. I think she's gonna have to be the 4th to go under 18. But it's gonna be like 1750.
Okay.
I'm gonna pick the same 2 people. I went back and forth on the men's win. Mostly, does Jim blow up or not? Mm-hmm. I think Tim Frericks was my pick before. Finally deciding on Jim. I'm going to say he just nails it. It's going to be a hot year, 1438.
Woo! He's got the record.
Okay. Yeah. Why not?
I guess
fading to it.
I guess I better get to the river in time.
All right. So what about
fading?
Courtney?
But I mean, like it's going to be a go out.
Yeah.
What's Courtney going to do?
I'm hoping. I mean, it's her first go here. I mean, Jim has pushed to that line twice and failed. Maybe this 3rd time, I think he just pushes toward it and gets it. Courtney hasn't. I hope she runs a little more conservative race and runs 18:10. I don't know. I mean, that's probably too wide a disparity between the 2 fields. But I mean, yeah.
Listen, we're just guessing.
Yeah,
we're just
totally.
guessing at this point. Well, I'm glad that I have a different answer than both you guys on both. But
so what do you got?
Yeah, so on the men's side, I can't look past Tim Frericks. Not only do I think he's top 5 most handsome men in the sport, but
you mean his first 4 are you?
I got Hal Kerner, obviously. Tim
I don't even. He's 0.
Yeah. No, but I think Tim. He's got the experience of winning big races. And he I think races aggressively, but not recklessly, like Jim has a propensity to do. Plus, he I think is more fresh coming into the race because he was injured earlier in the spring. He said he got a really solid 8-week training block in, and he's getting fit at just the right time. And usually for me, that means that I'm fit and I have energy. And in this race, and particularly in 100 milers, I just think that's so important to have that desire to go to the well. There.
So you have Tim winning.
I got Tim winning, but I've got him at 15:10. So I don't have anybody under 15.
No one under 15.
No one under 15.
Because of the heat.
Because of the heat. But I wouldn't put it past
Women's side?
Women's side, I've got a good feeling about this one, and I picked Stephanie Violet to win her 2nd Cougar, and for a few similar reasons. I think, well, first of all, she's a past champion, so she's done it before. She knows what it takes. She's also been on the podium another time, and she's had recent disappointment. She had disappointment last year, and that you can't discount the motivation that comes from that. And I think she's finally passed like her injury that kept her out of the sport, her Achilles, which laid her up for a year, I think is finally in her rearview mirror, and I think she's hungry. She's got great guidance from Jason Koop and has been doing really good training, and yeah, just the experience factor I don't think you can discount. But again, I don't think it's going to be a super fast race. Stephanie has run I think 18:01 in the past. Yeah. I've got her running 18:20 this year.
So quick question, Tim, does that mean we all pick Francois for second?
I didn't go that deep. I mean, it's hard. It's insane to pick against the guy. I mean, he's the greatest 100-miler potentially ever, certainly of our generation. You look past Killian a little bit, but yeah, I mean, the only thing that makes you look past him is like
the heat.
The heat, the terrain is not necessarily in his wheelhouse, and does he have like the energy again? He won UTMB in an insane battle, and I don't think you can discount what that takes out of you. And then 6 weeks later, he did the John Muir Trail and broke the record by 12 hours in like just an insane 3-day excursion.
But he also picks his battles.
He picks his battles, yeah.
He hasn't done his ends.
That's, I mean, I would not be shocked at all if Francois won and broke the record. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to pick against the Cowboys. And I think the other thing is, what I think is interesting as it pertains to the Cowboys, is Flagstaff, I think, is just such a uniquely good place to train for this race. You have the altitude, you have the heat, you have the canyon where you can run downhill hard a lot, and you've got the community, you've got people who can push you. And so I gotta think that a Cowboy is gonna win the race, whether it's Jim or Tim, who knows, but I wouldn't be surprised to see, 2 or 3 of those guys, or all 4 of them in the top 10. Yeah.
So what's the big surprise this year? What's the thing that we're not thinking about? What's this year's gun hill? What's this year's like person who melts down and then comes back to life?
The fun thought I've had is a couple years ago we had was it Annie Trent coming in with Goodhill Swanson? Mm-hmm. Was it Austin Tweetmeyer who's running this year? I kind of have like I hope he has a great race, but I also have this picture in my mind of him finishing with one of those 70-plus-year-old dudes.
Austin Tweetmeyer is in the race. Tim's offspring.
Yeah, another one of the.
Yeah, we actually tried to get them to come on the show just because I think that's such a great story. And just to wrap it up, Tim Tweetmeyer, who's on the board, has finished the race 25 times, all under 24 hours. An absolute legend for those of us who follow the sport. But his son is running the race this year, and he is going to be pacing his son. And for the first time, I think he is not going to be. He had some responsibility that he used to do at the race every year that he can't do this year because he's going to be pacing his son to his first ever Western State.
His responsibility is running out and chasing in the horses at the very end of the race, and he just couldn't commit himself to that.
Well, I think that's a great place for us to wrap it up. I mean, we could go on forever, as you guys can tell, but we've been going for 30 minutes already. So we appreciate everybody's patience and willingness to stick around. And these guys are a wealth of knowledge, so if you see them around, ask them more questions. I think we should wrap it up by mentioning, obviously, the sponsors, DryMax, Buff, and Jaybird Sports, who support I Run Far. The Coffee Bar, who has generously lent us their space for 2 days, asking nothing in return. So please get coffees from them this week.
And I just have to thank you, Dylan Bowman, for pestering us for, if not 3-4 years, to make this happen.
We did it, finally. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
I think it's important to note that we need to thank Bryon and Megan,
and Derek Lytle back there for
I Run Far. I Run Far is the voice of the sport. There's no doubt it's the voice of the sport. You guys do so much for so little, and you make us feel so good about it. So to Bryon and Megan and all that you guys do, let's hear it for I Run Far.